The story opens with a haunting and mysterious question. Why did the demons ask Jesus to let them enter the pigs? A seemingly innocent question that opens a door to a confrontation between the powers of heaven and the darkness of hell. Jesus and his disciples have just crossed the Sea of Galilee, a body of water known for its sudden storms and the violence of the souls of those possessed by demons. After calming the waters with their majestic power, they arrive in a strange land, a place called the Land of the Gentiles, where the sacred pales in the shadow of sin and fear. This is not a bustling town, nor a peaceful field, but a land of death and terror. It is on this edge of life and death that Jesus meets them, two souls imprisoned in darkness. They are not ordinary people. They were demon-possessed men, imprisoned in a state so terrible that their very presence drove anyone away. They lived in tombs, not by choice, but because that was the only place where darkness could contain them. All around them was death, wailing, and the air was so cold that it seemed as if hell itself had stretched out its arms to cover the place. Those two men, with eyes as red as hellfire, stepped out of the darkness of the tombs when Jesus arrived. The growls that escaped from their throats were not those of men, but of the invisible forces that possessed them. In the light of Jesus, they cried out, not in a voice of supplication, but in fear and hatred, "What have we to do with you, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before our time?" In the distance, on a hill near the shore, a herd of pigs grazes, completely unaware that they are about to become an integral part of the confrontation between light and darkness. The demons, sensing the presence of a higher power, know that they cannot escape now, but they refuse to go into the void. They need a place to stay, a body to continue their disastrous presence. They beg, but not with humility. Their plea is desperate, but also malicious. "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." Those words, ringing in the stifling air of the barren land, mark the beginning of the fall of the demons. And at that moment, the power of Jesus is once again demonstrated. He does not argue. He does not judge. Only a single word escapes his lips, short but powerful as a thunderbolt: "Go." And so the battle began, not with swords or physical power, but with the domination of light over darkness, of life over death. As the two demon-possessed men burst from the gloomy tombs, the air was heavy and suffocating. The quiet of the land by the Sea of Galilee was shattered by inhuman screams, a sound that was a mixture of extreme fear and profound hatred. It was not just the voices of two men, but an echo from another world, a place where the light of God was only a greater threat. They stood there, captives of evil, trembling in the presence of Jesus. Their eyes, fiery and defiant, could not conceal the terror that smoldered within. The ones who possessed their souls, the demons, recognized immediately this was no ordinary man. This was the Son of God, the one who had the power to defeat darkness itself. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" The scream rang out, piercing as metal on metal. Their voices betrayed unease, but not remorse. "Have you come to torment us before our time?" The words carried a painful awareness. They knew that the final judgment was coming, a day when they would be imprisoned forever, incapable of causing harm. But this was not yet the day, and they clung to every moment of freedom they had left. In the distance, the pigs continued to graze peacefully, unaware that they were about to become part of a story that would be told for millennia. The demons, desperate but still vicious, turned to Jesus, making a request: "If you cast us out, send us into the herd of pigs." Their plea was not a humiliation, but a strategy, a way to continue to exist, even in the most abject of bodies. Jesus, in commanding silence, looked at them. No speech, no complicated moves. Only one word was spoken, short but powerful as thunder: "Go." Instantly, the silence was shattered. The demons left the two men like a swirl of black smoke, rushing into the herd of pigs. The mindless animals suddenly screamed in panic. No one could stop them as they plunged straight down the cliff, thousands of them sinking into the deep sea with a terrifying noise. The scene, a sudden chaos, ended in absolute silence. The two men, now freed, collapsed, silent and conscious for the first time in years of imprisonment in the darkness. But this release came with a price, and this event would not be forgotten. The demons were defeated, but they were not completely gone. They left a mark, a warning. The darkness does not give up easily, and it always seeks to cling to any opportunity, no matter how small. But the light, in Jesus, always wins. The screams of the pigs in their frenzy echoed across the shore, then were abruptly cut off by the dry sound of them plunging into the sea. The pigs, thousands of them, disappeared beneath the surface, leaving a white foam, silent and terrifying. The pigmen stood frozen, eyes wide, mouths open but unable to make a sound. They had just witnessed the unbelievable, a power beyond anything they had ever understood. When silence returned, they could not stand still. With hearts pounding with terror, they ran as if possessed, leaving the shore and the drowned pigs behind. Their hurried steps led through the narrow path toward the village, where they could think of nothing but spreading the news. But how to tell the story? How to express the power they had just witnessed? The power of a man who had commanded the devil and caused the pigs to hurl themselves to their deaths. In the village, a crowd quickly gathered. The swineherds, still panting and covered in dust, began to tell their story. Their voices trembled, sometimes breaking, but the words they uttered left the village breathless. 2 demoniacs had been delivered, but at the cost of the destruction of the pigs, the entire herd. The initial horror quickly turned to anger. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, shifting from fear to outrage. The pigs were not just a treasure, but the lifeblood of the community. Their deaths were not only a huge economic loss, but also a terrifying reminder of what such power could do. The villagers decided to do something. They flocked to see Jesus. The man they had heard had performed this miracle, but when they arrived, they did not greet him with gratitude or honor. Instead, their eyes were filled with suspicion and uncertainty. They saw 2 demon-possessed men, now sober and sitting beside Jesus. But that did not comfort them. They did not see the souls being freed. They saw only their own losses. No one said it, but everyone understood. Jesus was a threat. His power was too great, too terrifying. They could not face his presence, not because he had done anything wrong, but because he exposed the truth of their worth. "Please leave this place," one said, his voice trembling but firm, and each of the others agreed, either in words or in looks. His presence, while liberating, made them feel too small, too vulnerable to things they could not control. Jesus, without a word, stood up. He looked at the villagers, his eyes gentle but sad. Then he turned and walked back to the boat, leaving behind a village still immersed in fear and material priorities over spiritual liberation. The story of the herd of pigs rushing down the cliff is not only a strange event in human history, but also a vivid picture of the infinite power of Jesus. This is not just a simple act of exorcism. It is an undeniable proof that the light of God can dispel all darkness, no matter where it lurks or how strong it is. Look at the context. 2 men, imprisoned by evil forces, completely helpless against the power of darkness. But the moment Jesus appears, that force collapses like a sand castle washed away by the waves. It is not only a physical deliverance, but also a demonstration of Jesus' power to dominate everything that belongs to the devil. The demons, with indignation and fear, realize that he is more than just a mortal. He is the Son of God, and they have nowhere to hide. But the power of the story lies not only in Jesus' victory over evil, it lies also in the villagers' reaction, a reaction that reveals the frailty of human nature. Instead of rejoicing at the deliverance of 2 souls, they bow down to the material loss. The pigs die, and with them, their hopes of profit, stability, and security are swept away. That reaction is more than a simple fear of Jesus' power. It is a choice, a reflection of the value they place above all else. They cannot see the gift of salvation, for their eyes are clouded by material desires. In their heavy silence, we hear a familiar echo. People in every age, in every culture, struggle between what we think we need and what we believe we want. This story is a lesson in the contradictions of the human soul. It begs the question, When faced with God's power and love, which will we choose? The fleeting security of worldly things, or the eternal liberation he brings? Jesus did not force the villagers. He did not demand that they accept him. He simply left, leaving them to their own devices. This is the nature of love and grace. It never forces, but his departure carried with it a silent warning. The darkness would return, and without him, would they be ready to face it? The story of the pigs rushing into the pit is not simply a story of the confrontation between light and darkness. It is a call, deep and haunting, to look into our hearts. What are we holding on to? What pigs in our lives are blocking us from receiving God's grace? And do we have the courage to let go of them, no matter how valuable, to step into his light? The story of Jesus, the two demon-possessed men, and the herd of pigs falling into a cliff is not just a mystical account, but a powerful call that has resonated across the millennia, aimed directly at the heart of every human being. It is not simply a miracle or a victory over evil. It is a mirror, a clear reflection of human nature, weak, greedy, and easily led astray. Consider for a moment two men who had been imprisoned by darkness, suffering and tormenting for years, were now freed. A monumental event that anyone could see as a gift from God. Yet the villagers who witnessed it chose to turn away. Why? Because they had lost their pigs, their source of income, and their small sense of security. This story forces us to ask the painful question: have we ever put material, temporary things above salvation and grace? How many times do we reject God's presence because we fear losing things that were never really ours? The villagers' actions are not uncommon. They are a reflection of all of us. We all have our own pigs, things we value more than God's presence. It might be money, fame, wrong relationships, or simply the comfort of sin. But this story warns that these pigs not only keep us from God, but also lead us to the abyss, not a sea, but a deep abyss of emptiness and despair. And in that moment of powerful silence, as Jesus leaves the village, we realize a haunting truth. He never forces us. He stands there, waiting, hoping that we will choose him. But if we refuse, he will also leave, leaving us to face our choice. The story ends, but the message does not. It asks a profound question in the heart of every viewer. When did you first feel the presence of God? And how did you respond to him? If your answer is not clear, now is the time to reflect. Don't let your pigs be the reason that prevents you from receiving God's light. Have the courage to step out of the darkness, let go of unnecessary burdens, and enter the peace that only he can bring. Remember, the journey of faith is never lonely. Share your story, your thoughts, and together we will learn to put God above everything else. And if you feel this video has touched your heart, please subscribe so that each day that passes, we will be closer to God's light.